Talk to me about Tesla. How do you view this whole situation?
Look, when you invest in an entrepreneur, you get the entrepreneur, and Elon is quite the entrepreneur. So how can anybody expect anything different? And if you look at the great companies right now with the largest market caps, I mean, Apple, Steve Jobs, everybody complained at one point or another about Steve. He got fired. You look at Amazon, everybody complained about Jeff. Oh, he's not trying to make any money. He's not giving guidance. He's not doing this. He's not doing that. Reed Hastings, the same thing. You know, when you invest in an entrepreneur, you get the personality. And if that's not appropriate, if you don't think it's right, buy another stock.
Yeah, but I mean, come on, the fundamentals matter, don't they? I mean, whether Tesla's going to go private or not, that's at the heart of this conversation.
But fundamentals, it depends where you are in your life cycle, right, or the growth cycle of the company. You know, if you look at the companies I just mentioned, you know, everybody complained about Amazon. Fundamentals matter. Everybody complained about Netflix. Fundamentals mattered. Again, Steve Jobs got fired from Apple. Fundamentals matter. And they brought in John Sculley, a traditional entrepreneur or a traditional CEO who was good at what he did, but he wasn't the guy to drive Apple to new heights. They had to bring Steve back. That's just the nature of great companies. These guys, you know, they don't cash out like me. They stay there because they're committed and they're dedicated. And you've got to take the, you know, some of the uniqueness of each person as part of what you invest in.
If you were a shareholder in Tesla, and I don't believe you are, correct me if I am wrong.
No, I'm not.
How should shareholders, though, feel about a tweet coming out saying funding secured, the stock gets halted? Now what if the deal doesn't happen?
I mean, look, I guess that's the way we run the country, run some companies now, too. But what I would tell Elon, and I don't know him at all, and I do have 2 Teslas, by the way, I would tell him shorts are your friends. I mean, you know, going back 20 years when we ran broadcast.com, you know, we were like a lot of internet companies heavily shorted. And, you know, the beauty of shorts is if you have a good quarter, if you do your job, then they have to buy back the stock at some point. And so I would sit down with them and say, look, rather than getting all upset about shorts, the more people that short your stock, the better position you have, the more, you know, the more buyers you have in waiting. And so I think that's kind of the attitude someone's got to get to him. But again, this is a guy who's sleeping in the factory. This is a guy who's pushing. And if you go through the list of all the companies I just mentioned, all the FANGs, you know, maybe with the exception of Google. I mean, even Facebook. When Facebook went public, then they had the questions about mobile. Then people questioned whether or not Zuckerberg can run it. Now Facebook's going through other issues. Again, people are questioning Zuckerberg. Great entrepreneurs who are so committed to their companies that they are never going to leave. They want to take it as far as they can take it. They are going to be unique, and there are going to be issues in how they address the public and how they address shareholders. And that's the beauty of why those companies are so amazing and so big. And so I would tell shareholders, you know, be grateful that you have somebody that committed to the company and recognize that, you know, being unique is what has helped make Elon or helped make Tesla so successful.
You think he's taken the shorts too seriously or
Yeah,
become
absolutely.
Consumed with what short sellers have been saying?
Yeah, it's hard not to, right? When it's your baby, a lot of times it's hard not to take all that personally. It's hard not to feel it inside of you. You know, to be a great entrepreneur, you've got to be so competitive. And all the people that I've mentioned all had their persnickety issues, but they were all incredibly competitive, including Elon. And when you're that competitive and people are nailing and talking bad about your family like that, it's hard not to respond. And he's got to learn not to respond. But look, it happens to me talking about the Mavericks. It happens to a lot of different people when you're criticized. It's hard not to return fire sometimes.
Let me ask you this. I'm intrigued in and of itself by the fact that you don't own Tesla. I mean, you've owned high valuation stocks in the past. Why not this one?
I just don't know the industry well enough. I mean, you know, I know streaming, so I've owned Netflix since 50. You know, I know Amazon and what they've done, and I've owned it off and on for a long time when it was single digits all the way up until I sold it, I think, at the 900s. And then when it came back to 700, I went all in and just bought, you know, more than I probably should have at the time, and now I'm happy about it. So, you know, those are industries that I fully understand, and those are, you know, Netflix and Amazon are my 2 biggest holdings.
You still think it's a FANG-driven market?
Yes. I mean, if you look at where growth is coming from and where uncertainty is being driven, particularly with tariffs, you know, the companies that'll benefit that will be impacted the least by tariffs are FANGs, and the companies that will benefit the most by tariffs on other types of companies and drive them and drive interest more towards their company are Amazon, Netflix, Google, Facebook, etc.
Mark, Jim, it's always great when you call in. I'm such a fan. But does it matter that David Wells, whom we both know is just a fantastic CFO, does it matter that he leaves Netflix?
I just read that, and I don't know what the circumstances are behind it, and so it's hard to say. It's funny. I was just thinking to myself, it's never a good sign when a CFO leaves, but it's not necessarily a bad sign. You always wonder, and I don't know what the circumstances behind it and his departure are at all. So I really can't speculate. I haven't sold my stock, if that means anything.
Well, that's a statement in and of itself. You think the market's in a good place overall, where we are right now? We're 1% from an all-time high, a new all-time high on the S&P.
It's a conversation I have. Literally, I'm down to maybe 4 dividend-owning stocks, 2 shorts, and Amazon and Netflix. And I've got a whole lot of cash on the sidelines. There's no way where you can just say, I just trust everything that's going on, and that concerns me. Put aside tariffs and put aside what the president is doing. He's got his reasons. But when I just think we borrowed from the future to kind of pump up the current market. And as much as Rick Santelli gets upset about quantitative easing and cheap money, I think borrowing from the future and the debt is just as big a problem, if not more so. And that really concerns me because at some point that's going to come due. And I don't know when the market will start to recognize that, and that's my biggest concern.
Do tell. 2 shorts. Any want to reveal?
No, I'll keep them to myself. But I will say this. There's a site that I started funding 12 years ago. It's called Share Sleuth. And he does all my research for public companies that present public information that most people ignore. And he just does a great job. And so if you want to know, where my short interests traditionally have been, just check out that site because we publish it all. Because, I'm not best friends with the SEC, so literally anything that I've shorted has been published.
Sure. You mentioned the stocks you own. You still own Twitter?
No, I don't. No, not for any particular reason other than I wanted to try to accumulate as much cash as possible.
Oh, so you're holding more cash than you normally would?
Oh, yeah, a lot more cash, yeah. I'm ready, willing, and able if something happens.
Great.
Do you think we're going to get, we're having a conversation around the desk today at the beginning of our show saying, look, this is the great American stock market representing what is a very strong economy, especially in the face of all of these other issues around the world, Turkey, currencies, et cetera. So rather than think that we can hit record highs, 3,000 or 3,100 on the S&P, you think we're going to take a step or two back?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that we can't hit record highs. I'm just saying that I don't have a complete level of confidence that we will. I'm concerned about the debt. I think with the tax cuts, there's the algorithm, if you will. Will the GDP realistically grow fast enough to overcome the increases in the debt and particularly increases from interest rates that expand the debt? And so I'm not ready to say that that's going to be a net positive to the economy. And if I get a feeling that growth will continue at 4+%, and we don't have, and the debt will then come down, then I'll get back in the market. But I just, I've got the 2 stocks that I think are great companies, and I think there's a whole lot of uncertainty that attaches itself to pretty much everything else in the market.
How does Mark Cuban view Apple hitting $1 trillion? Does that make you concerned, worried about where we are in the cycle? Do they, oh my gosh, that marks a top if nothing else? How do you view it? How do you view something like that?
Because every threshold always seems really, really high until it's not anymore. And particularly with inflation starting to pop up more and more and more, I think big numbers will be big until now they're small. I mean, I remember being a kid, $100,000 house. If only one day I can own a $100,000 house. If only one day this stock had a $100 million market cap. If only one day this company had a $1 billion market cap. And then, you bust through those barriers and then they become the floor. So, I try not to put a whole lot of credence into, well, we're hitting this number, so everything must be different.